You want to meet Seth Dillon, CEO of the Babylon Bee? He's going to talk about his fight with the New York Times and the influence of G.K. Chesterton here at the Bee at the upcoming Chesterton Conference this July. Dillon will keynote Thursday evening, July 29th. The theme of the conference is The Laughing Prophet, Hope, Joy, and G.K. Chesterton. Celebrate all things Chesterton with common sense, wonder, humor, and adventure. On July 29th, 30th, and 31st. In person, you can see him in Naperville, Illinois, or you can go online and see it's a hybrid event. That's like two events together. Enjoy a lively, engaging, and fun weekend with like-minded folks, intellectual stimulation, spiritual edification, and fun. Use the code TheB25 for a discount on registration. That's the B25. And FYI, Chesterton Society President Dale Ahlquist is going to be our guest on this podcast in October. I'm pretty excited about that. Register for the Chesterton Conference at chesterton.org/conference.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Babylon Bee Interview Show, a very exciting show where we, two very exciting people and skilled interviewers, interview very exciting guests, and we're very excited today.
So excited because you know what? We get to talk to a cop.
Yeah, we like talking to
cops. They always
cops.
have the best stories.
They do. We like picking their brains.
And this was a young, lively, rambunctious cop. He's still working as a cop.
You know, usually I listen to like true crime podcasts, and you listen to the cops, and they're like, I detained the suspect, and suspect A was approximately 30 feet away. Yes. He was dressed in brown, and
an altercation
occurred, and this guy was just like, not like that.
Yeah,
I wasn't gonna imitate
him. Very animated.
Officer Ryan Tillman, who runs an organization called Breaking Barriers United. And it's an organization that tries to repair the bond between law enforcement and the community. It's a Christian organization, and Ryan Tillman's a Christian.
Explicitly Christian.
Yeah. I went on the website, and it's like, sometimes it's like it's run by Christians, but they don't.
They kind of hide it like BLM hides the communism.
Yeah. But that's not BBU. What BBU does is on the front pages is like, this organization is brought to you by Jesus Christ in big letters. It's literally on the website.
Yeah, it's right there.
So it's pretty cool.
And he'll be on every interview you see this guy on, whatever his secular news station is. And he immediately leads with the Lord. And he just talks about God in his life.
It's freaking awesome. So BBU believes in getting the best police officers and transparency. They do workshops. They talk to the students and community. They do a lot of student, high school outreach.
They dance.
They dance.
There's a video of him dancing.
Oh, okay.
It's like his top video.
I was just rolling with it. And Ryan's got a weekly podcast through BBU called #It's Needed. It's needed.
It's needed.
It's needed. And we think that podcast is
needed.
And that's why it's called It's Needed. It's on iTunes and YouTube at BBU. You can find on YouTube. And they've got Facebook, Instagram, and BreakingBarriersUnited.com. So please check out all of Ryan's stuff. And let's talk to him.
And he's got some crazy stories he's going to tell us.
Really cool cop stories.
Especially in the subscriber portion.
Ooh, there was a good one. It rivaled our best cop story so far.
Pretty good. Pretty good. Oh, I hear him. He's coming right now. I hear sirens.
He's kicking the door down. Freeze.
He's there.
Scum.
Why are we... He's there.
All right. Well, how you doing, Ryan? Thanks for joining us, man.
Doing good, man. Doing
awesome.
Good. Thanks for having me, fellas. I appreciate it. I'm always rushing from one place to another, but, I'm still glad I made it here safely.
Yeah, you got a rich social media presence and you're doing all this stuff, but you're actually a cop still, right?
I am. I was just telling somebody, 40 hours a week, I'm a cop still.
Oh, 40 hours too. Do you do we work 24 hours or something?
Yeah, I wish. The firefighter schedule, to go and, work out, lift weights, wash cars, and then go to a call every night. No, we don't do that schedule. No, but yeah, I'm 40 hours a week as a police officer full time. And then I'm still traveling, speaking across the country. I'm going to Virginia next week, be in Pennsylvania, Dallas, and stuff like that.
Wow, that's wild.
Wow.
Yeah. How you find time, man?
My beautiful wife at home, and she holds it down the fort. And I got to be very strategic with my time and kind of game plan specifically so I can make everything.
You always got the lights and siren going.
Yeah, right.
Get everywhere fast.
The police express lane.
That's it. So we want to talk about this Breaking Barriers United, your Christian organization. That's pretty cool. But first, why don't you give us a cool cop story? That's always what we want to know. If I'm hanging out with a cop at like a party, though, this guy's a police officer. That's the first thing.
So I'll give you a cool cop story. It'd be quick. I mean, it was. This is not one of the gory graphic ones, so I do have those. I do have those.
Yeah, save that. Yeah.
Yes, there is a very crazy one I have for you on that one. But
you see if you can top our last cop, because our last cop that came on had an amazing story.
Yeah. Oh man,
we're gonna see if you can one up.
Well, this one is actually kind of a cool story.
Give us some first.
This one is. I was actually on a call for service. Some girl had called the police because she said that her dad had punched her in the face. So we got there, and the girl was bleeding, but it wasn't nothing crazy. So she chose not to go to the police station or whatever, or to the hospital. And so as we're there talking, I talked to dad, and as I start to see dad, I'm like looking around the house, and I think there was like 4 other kids in the house, so they have a big family, and Christian guy, and I started seeing he had Tony Evans, and Tony Evans is a pastor that I love to listen to. So we got to talking, and he was like, yeah, man, I hit my daughter, and he was like, the reason I hit her though is because she's sneaking boys into the house, she's calling my wife the B word, she's doing all sorts of stuff that she shouldn't be doing, so I popped her in the face. And so it was weird because like some of the kids were like, you should have never called the police. And then others were like, no, like dad shouldn't have hit her, blah, blah, blah. So anyways, me and my partner, we made it like it was a child. I mean, he hit her, caused some type of damage or some bleeding. So we took him to jail. But I treat him with a lot of respect. I was like, hey man, I don't want your neighbors to have to see you be arrested, man. I'm not gonna walk you out of your house in handcuffs. I'm gonna walk you to my car, and then we'll kind of put you in handcuffs behind the door, so that way they don't have to see it. And I was like, and I don't want your kids to see that either. So then he was like, man, I appreciate that. So then I prayed with him, and then he got in the car, and then I was getting ready to leave. I wasn't taking him to jail. My partner was. And like, for some reason, I just felt like God just pulling on my spirit, like, hey, go back and pray with the wife. So I was like, all right, cool. So I went back, went back to the house. I was like, hey, this is going to sound kind of weird, but for some reason, I feel like God just asked me to pray for you and your family. She's like, oh my goodness, like I was hoping you were going to come back. And so I grabbed hands, held hands with her and the family, and we started praying or whatever. So that was that. So then fast forward like 4 months, my wife and I we're going on a vacation with the kids to Hawaii. And so me running late to everything, even this morning, I'm like, hey babe, we'll be fine. We'll fly out. Like the flight is at 8:30 tomorrow. We'll fly out. We'll get to the airport. LAX is 7:30. We should be good. I didn't realize that I should have probably left a lot sooner than what we left from here. And so we pull up to the airport, and it's like 7:15-ish, 7:30-ish. And like the lines are like serpentined around. I'm like, oh my goodness, my wife is going to kill me. Like she's going to be like, I should have never listened to you. We got 2 kids, a stroller, all this other stuff. So anyways, long story short, as soon as we pull up, I see a guy that recognized me. I didn't recognize him. So I'm like, hey man, how you doing? I hope all is well. I was like, I'll talk to you in a minute. I got to check my bags. So I go check my bags. And then I got to check my gun into the airport. So then I come back. I was like, hey, man, it's so good seeing you. How you doing? And then it kind of caught me where remember this guy. So I was like, hey, man, like, good seeing you. So he's like, hey, man, you want me to take you to the front of the line? I was like, yeah, like, I would love that, man. So he walks me and my family up to the front of the line. We bypass everything because he worked for Delta. I should have said that. He worked for Delta, the airlines we were flying out of. So we bypass all the lines. And then when we get through security, we ended up hopping on the tram. They were like, hey, we'll drive you up to the tarmac. So when we got on the plane, like as soon as we sat down, the plane took off. Like they were just waiting on us to get there, and there was like a last call. So in 2 minutes, the plane was going to take off. So then we sit down. My wife was like, how did you know that guy that brought us up here? I was like, you want to know what's funny? I was like, I arrested that guy on a child abuse 3 months ago. and she was like, are you serious? I was like, yeah, like I arrested this dude 3 months ago. I prayed for his family. I was like, in all places at LAX, I see him at all lines. And so that was a really cool story because it came full circle. One day I'm helping him and his family out. And the next day he's helping my family out. So kind of crazy how things work full circle like that.
Power of prayer.
Cool story, bro.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
That's great.
Now my next story I'll save though. That would be a little bit more.
Yeah, I was expecting like a meth head bit my partner's nose off.
Oh no, I got those. I'm gonna save some for the other one.
Saving that.
Yeah,
gonna be in the
you got to go to the subscriber portion.
See?
Okay.
We're already getting them to shill for us.
Chicken soup for the soul portion here, and then we'll do
the crazy stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. So, I mean, a lot's been going on with all the cop stuff. I mean, and you're pretty young, so I mean, what was the from what I've seen in your story, you didn't really ever plan on becoming a police officer. What was the environment when you decided to become one? Was it, I mean, because right now I can't imagine anybody wanting to become a cop.
Yeah, so I didn't want to become a cop at all. I couldn't stand cops. I had some bad run-ins with them, and then my family's had some bad run-ins with them. And so, fast forward, I went to college, played football, graduated, moved back home, was working at Abercrombie and Fitch, which I hated, man. I was spraying the cologne around the store all day long. And then probably got cancer from that. Hey, if you were working for Abercrombie and Fitch during this time period. But anyways.
Do you still wear the cologne? Or do you?
No, I don't.
No, okay.
So I'm working there. And so my wife had got pregnant with our firstborn child. And I was like, I need to do something else. Like, I was like, I did Primerica. I was doing door-to-door sales. And I was like, I need to do something else to kind of, make sure I support her. So long story short, my dad's friend was a police officer locally. He was like, Ryan, you should be a cop. I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not working for the man. Not about to be a pig. Like, nope, not doing that. So for 2 years, he chased me around. He was like, you should do it. So I prayed about it, and the doors just kind of flew open after that. I said, God, if this is what you want me to do, open the door. If not, close it. Well, he opened the door, and I got hired with Chino Police Department, and that was in 2013. And so even after I got hired and went through the academy and went through training, I was like, man, I still don't know if this is what I want to do. I was like, I feel like every time I pull somebody over, I feel like I'm messing with them. I don't really like taking people to jail because I feel like I'm disturbing them. Mm-hmm. But then when I got on my own as a solo police officer, I started to see that there are quality of life issues that existed, and that if law enforcement was not there to prevent some of these people that want to go out there and do bad things to the community, then everybody will be victimized. And then that's when it all kind of clicked, and I was like, there is a purpose for law enforcement. And when that happened, I started to see life from a completely different lens. I started to understand things that I never understood. I was now put in situations and positions that I would once criticize as police officers. And so that's when I was like, I need to go out there and educate the world about what law enforcement really is, because a lot of people don't have this inside knowledge that I have now. And so I've been on this journey for the last 6 years of just trying to educate people what law enforcement's about, why we do what we do, how we do what we do. But at the same time, I also lead with empathy, and I acknowledge the wrong, because we're not all perfect. Sadly, police officers, we're still human beings. And so human beings make mistakes. And because of that, we have to acknowledge those mistakes.
Yeah, it seems like we're dealing with a very nuanced issue. Like, how do you manage society? Like, that's a very complex question. And yet all we get is like social media. You get a 3-second clip of a crime or a shooting, and, and that's all we get to go off. And you get to see it from a completely different perspective. That's amazing that your view on it changed so much. Quickly.
Yeah, it has, man. It's been good though. It's given me a lot of context and allows me to give the real context.
So what are some of the big misconceptions that you feel like people need to get?
That's a great question. So people have to realize is that police officers are humans. And I know it sounds cliche, but I have to say that because we're human beings, police officers make mistakes. Mm-hmm. I just did a breakdown on my social media page, Breaking Barriers United. That was a little plug right there. Mm-hmm. But I just did a breakdown on the situation where this lady bit this officer when she was in handcuffs. And it's been going viral. Everybody's been saying, oh, no, they shouldn't have done that. He shouldn't have punched her in the face. And that's why it went viral, because the officer punched her in the face. And so, one, I educated people on people can still be a threat even when you're in handcuffs. We just saw a video in Vegas a few weeks ago where this guy took the officer's gun while he was in handcuffs and was able to shoot the officer in his leg. So people can still be a threat. But the other part is that if you get bit by somebody, just because you're a human being, you're going to have a natural reaction to that. And that natural reaction is either going to be fight or flight. Either you're going to try to run away from a person, or you're going to naturally respond by fighting that person. And so as police, that doesn't go away just because you have a uniform and a badge on. Mm-hmm. And so I said that I think the officer was justified in what he did. One, because he stopped the threat. But two, we have natural reactions. So those are some of the examples that I use of how I'm able to give context to people. And sometimes people don't want to hear what I have to say, but who cares? I'm not trying to always be politically correct, just because that's why I think we're in the state we're in this world, is that everybody wants to be politically correct without actually hearing things without getting their feelings hurt. So story for a different day.
Have you ever been bit? I mean, my 3-year-old bites me. And then my immediate reaction, I don't punch him, but I'm just I shove him. You feel the feeling, get him off me.
Man. So I'm not going to lie. Somebody actually one time I thought tried to bite me. And I say I thought because retrospect, looking back, he wasn't. He was trying to help me out. This guy had a methamphetamine pipe in his pants, but he was already handcuffed. And so I was like, I'm going to go get it. So as I went to go get it, he had this huge shirt on. So I'm trying to lift up his shirt. And so he bit down like towards my fingers, and I like almost snapped. Like I did snap back. So I start cussing at him and stuff, which I don't really cuss that much. And I start cussing, and I was like, but I almost snapped back to my old Rialto days. Where like I was about to fight somebody on the street, and I had to calm myself down. But just for a split second, I saw how the human. Like how human I was. And he was like, hey, I'm sorry, officer. I wasn't trying to bite you. I was actually trying to help you and just grab the shirt and hold it with my teeth while you were grabbing it. And I apologized to him. I was like, hey, man, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have yelled at you. Shouldn't have cussed at you like that. But it just goes to show like it can happen to anybody. Like, you respond from a human reaction. So.
And if a meth guy bites you, then I think you would turn into a meth guy or something.
Yeah, he turned to a zombie.
It's communicable.
Right.
Yeah. Well, you're pretty outspoken, like about your faith. I know your organization is explicitly Christian. You're talking about like praying with people that you're arresting, and I mean, how does that work? I feel like cops tend to be more neutral, when they're like on duty, or what kind of response have you got to that kind of stuff? And
I'm not your typical cop, and I always tell people I pride myself on that. Like I wouldn't be out and about. Like you would not be able to tell as a police officer if I was out and about, unless you just follow all the stuff I do. But that's because when I took this job, I said I vowed to be different than the officers that mistreated me. And so I had this idea of what cops were before I became one. I was like, these are the guys that got picked on in high school, so they became cops so they can pick on everybody else. Like, I didn't want to be that guy. And then I didn't want to be the guy at parties, which they're always reserved, hands crossed, nobody wants to talk to, or they don't want to talk to anybody. They wear 5'11" pants off duty. If you're listening to this and you're a cop, no knock on you if you wear 5'11" outside of work. But 5'11" is a brand. It's a cop, it's a tactical brand. But I didn't want to be that guy that you can point out as a cop. And so for me, I think because I try to be submissive to God and the Holy Spirit, I have no choice but to be outspoken about my faith. And I think that's what this world needs more of, especially in this day and age where, right is now wrong and wrong is now right. If we don't stand firm in our beliefs, then we will be the ones that are protesting in Cuba because Cuba has now become, a communist country and stuff like that. So, that's why I'm so outspoken about my faith.
As a Christian, God's always there for you, but sometimes things can feel downright overwhelming, and it can be beneficial to speak with someone who shares your faith and values.
Online counseling from faithfulcounseling.com is there for you. They connect you to professionals, Christian counselors, safe private online environment, super convenient. You can do it through the app, through video chat, texting, and I think just about any way you can communicate with somebody.
You think of it, they have it.
Smoke signals.
Not an actual guarantee, but they do have a lot of stuff. And they have licensed counselors who are specialized in depression, stress, anxiety, and crisis of faith issues too, which you don't always get with counselors if they're not, Christians. You don't want no atheist counselor.
There's financial aid available for anybody who qualifies.
Anything you share is confidential, just like with a regular counselor. If you're not happy with your counselor for any reason, you can get a new one. They're available worldwide. You can do text, chat, phone, video. You can start communicating in under 24 hours. It's available on desktop, mobile, Android, iOS.
What?
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. BlackBerry? No, maybe not. But if you go to faithfulcounseling.com/BabylonB, listeners will get 10% off their first month.
That's right. So why not get started today? Go to faithfulcounseling.com/BabylonB. Just fill out the questionnaire to help them assess your needs and get matched up with a counselor that you're going to love.
faithfulcounseling.com/Babylon.
B. You hear any complaints like, this guy made me pray with him at gunpoint.
Beat me with the Bible, man.
Right?
He's like Jules on Pulp Fiction.
So I'm very strategic on how I do it. I only pray with them when they can't leave. What I mean by that is when they're in the backseat of my car, they're handcuffed. Really not much you can do. Yeah. And if you don't want me to pray with you, I'll just put on some Christian music. You can't really do much about that.
It's a good evangelism strategy. Evangelism tactics from a cop. I like it.
But I've had people come back, and there's a girl, she was a young girl, and same thing with her. We were getting calls on her left and right, and I prayed with her, and I saw her about a year ago, and she was all strung out on drugs. She's no longer strung out on drugs, and she will never forget that moment in time where I prayed with her in the back seat, and it's changed her life. So you never know.
What were some of the negative interactions you had with cops when you were younger, or the community had with cops when you were younger? Yeah,
so I was pulled over a few times. One time I was talking on the cell phone. Now, granted, I shouldn't have been on the cell phone. I get it, whatever. But the officers were like, you need to get off the mother effing phone, wipe the mother effing smile off your face. We'll pull you over and all this other stuff. And these are some undercover guys. So that was one of them. And I was like, in my mind, I'm thinking like, you could have easily just told me to just pull over or just pull me over. Like, you don't have to cuss at me and all this other stuff. The other one was I was driving through a neighborhood in Ranch Cucamonga, And it was a nicer neighborhood. And I wasn't even in like a busted car. And at the time, I was in a G35, which was at the time was still a nicer car. And this guy was following me around, and he was like, "Hey, you need to get out of here. You look suspicious, blah, 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 blah." And he was like, "Hey, I'm an off-duty deputy, and if you don't leave the area, I'll call some of my partners. They'll come over here." And I'm just like, seriously? Like, I'm just driving around. So that was one. And then my uncle's been pulled over a few times, sat on the curb, handcuffed, said he fit the description of a robbery suspect. And then when it was all said and done, they just let him go and didn't really give him much explanation. So those were things growing up that I started to experience. And I was like, man, like, why do these guys got to be like that? Why can't you do a job but still be courteous in doing it? And so now that I am a police officer, I've experienced that you can do both.
Yeah, is that, I was afraid that's like got to be a tough thing. Like I was, you know, when I was getting ready for your interview, one of the cases that I haven't seen a lot of analysis of was the Ferlando Castillo shooting. A lot of people don't do breakdowns of that one. It feels so cut and dry when you see, like, man, you just shot the guy.
Yeah.
But there was information that he had, I guess the cop he fit the description of a different, a thief or a robber, some robbery guy, someone just committed armed robbery. But you're in this situation where, like, you're going, this guy looks like he fits the description, but that just on its face sounds bad. Just saying, like, well, you're a black guy, you look like this robber. Yeah,
you know, and I've kind of seen both sides. I've been that person that was the guy that was suspicious, and to all the cops out there, if you're listening to this, or if let's say you're not a cop, but you are, I support the Thin Blue Line. Understand, like, it's not a comfortable feeling when people stop you because you're suspicious, and you know, rightfully so, you're not suspicious doing anything you're doing. And that happens all the time. And so when that happens over and over and over again to you, you're going to start to feel a certain type of way when you feel like you're being targeted because you are black or Hispanic or whatever it is. But on the flip side of that, man, like, I have been the one that has detained somebody because they fit the description. I kid you not, I was on a shooting probably like 6 months ago. And it was it happened right in front of like a Whopper grill. And so we get there really quickly. We talk to witnesses. They're like, hey, the witnesses, it's a black guy. He's driving a black car and he's wearing this or whatever. So sure enough, I'm like right across the street at the 7-Eleven. There's a black guy walking in wearing black clothing, driving a black car. And no joke, I'm like, man, like, this might actually be the freaking guy that did the shooting. And so I go and talk to him, so as I'm talking to him, I play it down a little bit. Hey, man, what's going on? What you up to? And he's like, oh, man, I'm just like, he's looking at me kind of like, oh, sketch. And he's like, I'm just getting something to eat. And I'm like, all right, cool. And so I like start talking. I just kind of like, you know, I have the gift of gab, so I'm just talking about nonsense, just trying to stall. And I'm like, hey, man, give me a picture of the suspect as soon as you have it, because they had surveillance. And so I was like, the guy was like, hey, man, can I leave? I was like, you know, honestly, you can't. And he was like, really? Why not? I was like, you're not going to believe me, but I need you to believe me, is that there was a shooting that just happened a few minutes ago. They described him as a black male driving a black car, and look, here you are, black male driving a black car, fit the build, and so I got to detain you. And I was like, I can actually show you the call, so you know I'm not BSing you. So he was like, you can tell he was mad, but I broke it down and I explained to him. And so he wasn't that frustrated. So when they sent me the picture, it wasn't him. And so I was like, hey, man, you're free to go, but I just want you to know, like, I'll show you the call. And he believed me. But, I mean, just imagine on the receiving end of that is like you have nothing to do with nothing and you're being detained. So I say that to say it does happen. People fit the description in the wrong place and wrong time. And a police officer has a job to do. But that's why where we come in as police officers, you can do this job without having to be that donkey. Somebody, like, not having to cuss at somebody, telling them to put their hands in the effing air. Like, you can do this job without having to do all that all the time. So I speak kind of fast, sorry.
No, yeah, we're trying to catch up. I'm processing.
We're on a time crunch, so it's better if we can slam as much into a
yeah, forgive me.
Short amount of time as possible, man.
Yeah, I had crappy car discrimination. I bought a car from my mom for $100, which I think she had bought for $300 or something.
So you got it on a discount.
And this thing barely ran. And there's this one town in Oregon, whenever I drove through it, they'd pull me over. They just pulled over anybody with a crappy car, I think. It's, you know.
Well, you know, but there's a difference between racial profiling and criminal profiling. You know, criminals fit a certain description. They do certain things. They cover their license plate. And so there are things that I will profile for criminality. Okay. Racial profiling is you're just profiling somebody because of the color of their skin, and that's wrong. So criminal profiling is okay. It's the racial profiling that gets you in trouble.
So crappy car is fine. Just, I don't care.
Depends on what kind of car.
I had a buddy who became a cop and then go on ride-alongs with him, and it was totally a thing he did. The crappier your car looked, the more he'd be like running their plates and like keep going after him.
I drove a '78 Buick and I put the bullet hole stickers on it, and you'd see the cops in Chino pull up next to me, and they'd look,
car.
and then they see the scrawny white high school kid, and they're like, I'm not driving.
That's racial profiling.
That's
too.
racial profiling, man. So should we defund the police?
Absolutely not. I mean, I always use the analogy. I played college football, and when I played college football, and I played Division I, so they spent a lot of money on us, from getting us the best equipment to getting us the best trainers, the best coaches, and they invested a lot of money into us as athletes, so that way we can perform the best we could on Saturday. Whether we won or lost, the whole goal was to win. And so if you take that same concept, why we should be investing into an entity that is put in place to protect us. Why would we want to take money out of an entity that is designed to essentially help you out if you need them? And so that when they started this whole defund the police movement, it didn't make any logical sense to me, because I was like, why would you take money to an organization or a structure that you already think is struggling? That you still need, though. Like, it's not like you can just get rid of the police. So if you need law enforcement, why would you take money and resources away from an entity that's already struggling? So no, I definitely don't agree with defunding police. I think you actually need to refund them. You've seen it happening in certain places, because when you defund the police start to lack more training. We already, in certain places across the country, police don't get the training that they need. So you start to take training away from them. You start to take, overtime that's needed to fill spots on the street. So there's no need to even have a discussion about whether or not we should fund or defund the police. I mean, it's a no-brainer. You got to fund them all day.
Well, I guess because they probably think the whole system, like, it's all systemically racist. There's no redeeming it. We have to tear the whole thing down and come up with some kind of community.
That's why I tell people, go live in another country and then tell me how that works out for you. I mean, you can look at other countries right now where law enforcement is systematically corrupt. Go to Mexico, go to, China, go to certain places in Africa. The entity of law enforcement is systematically corrupt. It is an extension of the communist government. So when you are pulled over by somebody out there, it's a lot different than being pulled over by somebody here in the United States. And so, it's
not real communism.
No.
Though.
No, right? It's so funny, but it's like, everybody talks this big game while you're here, but go somewhere else and then talk that same game that you're, whatever.
What about this argument that, we've had other cops on the show, and there's one, I remember at least one said, when it comes to the defund the police thing, he said there's a certain aspect there where there's a lot of things that police do, which, they're spread thin, like dealing with homeless and things like that, where what if that was offloaded to other, have somebody just specialize in that? Or
so the reallocations of different funds to different places. I think there's definitely a place for that. I actually...
do you feel like you're spread thin on things that maybe you shouldn't be having to respond to as a cop?
Yes and no. We go to barking dog calls. Should we be going to barking dog calls? Probably not. You know what I mean? But for the most part,
you can get drones to take care of that.
Yeah, and
heavily armed.
I think that they do offload too much stuff with us sometimes as law enforcement. I know, right? I think they do offload too much problems on law enforcement at times, but at the same time, like, you really don't know what you have until you respond. Like when somebody calls 911, you don't really know what you're dealing with until you get there. So how do you know that this is a call that should have been, saved for a social worker?
Yeah.
Until you get there. Or how do you know this was a call? The social worker goes and they get there and is like, no, this should have been a call for police. So I think if we're trained to get there, and then once we realize, and which is, I think we're starting to see law enforcement evolve into that, is, or we'll go on a call, we'll see like, hey, this isn't really something for us. Now we can bring the resources here that will get them the help, and then we can go do something else. I think that's kind of a better solution, as opposed to just getting rid of law enforcement to responding to certain calls, as opposed to having the wrong people respond to those calls.
Hey, are you enjoying this interview?
Oh, I know I am.
Oh, I sure am. I'm actually probably sweating trying to think up new questions now.
Yeah, this very moment.
But if you're enjoying it, you should become a Babylon Bee subscriber, because the interviews are much longer.
Yes, and we also have the most fun, because the portion of the interview that does not go up here on YouTube publicly can be Googled, so our guests kind of, kick back a little bit and get a little looser.
They tell us what they really think.
And we always do our 10 questions, which for everybody and tends to be the funnest part of the show.
Yes. So become a Babylon Bee subscriber at babylonbee.com/plans, and you get the full interview show, and you also get it a day early. Do it now.
So there's one of the big outrage things is, there's these shootings that happen between police officers and I mean, there's black individuals and white. I mean, there's all races that get shot. But, they have the court case, and then a cop very often does not go to prison for murder. And what are some of the complexities there? But I mean, to me, it feels kind of obvious. Like, one of the risks of your job is that you might shoot somebody. It's almost like if you're a dishwasher, one of the risks is you might break a ton of dishes one night on accident. Now that's, you have to be way more careful, and that's the cost of your job. But like,
the dishes aren't
no one's going to go, you came in premeditated and decided to break all those dishes because you hate the restaurant. I mean, maybe, but like, what are the complexities of trying to get a cop charged with murder? And is that fair or unfair? I mean, should those laws be changed? Are there special laws for police? I've heard that argument.
That's a very complex topic, but it's a good topic. And the reason it's good is because I'm giving you, that's 2 points right there.
2 points, 0. He hasn't said any of my questions are good.
I'll give you extra point. I'll give you extra credit. Honestly, it is
participation trophy.
So that's topic specifically is complex, and the reason it's complex is because anytime an officer pulls a trigger or takes the life of another human being, you have to understand, okay, were they doing it in the capacity of their position within that law enforcement agency? Were they trying to effect an arrest, overcome resistance, or prevent escape? If you're trying to do one of those three things and you had a lawful reason to be there, then it's justifiable. It may not always look pretty, but it's justifiable, and that's based off of case law from Graham versus Connor. And so a lot of these things that the general public doesn't know. And so you take in a situation that looks very, very bad, perceptually, then it's like, man, this officer should be arrested for this, and that. But if you knew the law and understood why he was there, then he has every reason to be there and do what he did. And that's why he's going to get off. The flip side of that is when officers do something that is corrupt or they do something that's shady, these officers are being prosecuted. We just don't hear about it. And so I always tell people, just because you don't hear about it or see about it, does that mean it doesn't exist? Of course it exists. You just aren't looking for it. And so the media, I was a journalist major in college. And one of the things I learned in journalism was that, if it bleeds, it sells. You know what I mean? And so right now, the big topic is white officer shoots black man. Oh, this is front news that we can run with this. Black police officer shoots white man. Oh, nobody's going to really watch that. So we don't really got to go, pursue it any further. And so that's just me addressing the elephant in the room is that, cops are prosecuted all the time and they are doing jail time. But the media is not going to go out there and run with all these big old things because at that moment in time, it's pretty much dead. You know what I mean? And so think about the George Floyd case with the conviction of Derek Chauvin. I mean, we're still seeing a little bit of media coverage of it, but nowhere near what we were seeing before the trial. And so the lady that killed the suspect by accident when she pulled a gun out, thought it was a taser. She's going to get prosecuted. She's probably going to go to jail. Will we hear about it? Probably not, because it's old news. But so I think that, a lot of times people are misconceived or misled when they believe that an officer should go to jail for something that was completely justified. It just perceptually didn't look justified. And I take the shooting that happened a few months ago in Wisconsin, where the officer shot the guy that was going to his car to grab a knife, and he shot him 7 times in the back. It looked terrible. I think it was Jacob Blake. It looked terrible, but you find out why the officers were there. They had a completely justified reason to be in there and shooting him in the back, because he was grabbing a knife and he was already showed a propensity for violence. They tried to tase him multiple times. So sorry about that tangent.
No, that's the stuff that fascinates me, is like breaking down the individual cases. What is your take on that? I mean, this is old, but the Ferlando Castillo shooting.
Ooh, that's 3 questions right there.
Is that a good question?
No, that's a good question. No, that's an okay question. Not a flag. That's a difficult one. I mean,
what do you think about crime?
5 points. 5 points right
Pro
there.
Pro or anti?
5 points. Philando Castillo, man, it's a difficult one because the officer was giving him clear directions to do something. He does it and he gets shot.
He says, don't go for the gun, but the guy...
So
he's saying he's telling him, I have a gun. Like, he seems like which it seems like in those situations, I've heard of that. There's a term for it. You get into like a loop.
Your OODA loop is, and so if that's what if we're talking about the same thing, but essentially in that situation, you have an officer that gives him direction to do something, but as he goes to do it, the officer's mind can't like process quick enough what it can't catch up to what he's saying to do.
Or even if he can't process, like, why is he still going for the gun when he's been told 3 times not to go for the gun?
Exactly.
Maybe in his mind he's just going, I got to get the gun.
Exactly. And so, it's one of those things that it's the cost of doing business. And I hate to say that some people are going to hear that and they're going to flip a wig. But, sometimes we as officers make mistakes. They always say that you have a second and a half to perceive something and a second and a half to react to something. And that is so true. I mean, if I have been an officer involved shooting, and when I got in that officer involved shooting, they asked me at the very end of it, how many times did I shoot? And I told them I shot 4 times. It wasn't until after the investigation was over that I found out I actually shot 6 times. And that's because before my brain actually had a chance to process what I did, I had already did it.
Yeah.
And so when you tell a person, don't reach for something, or you give a person instructions to do something, your body is going to naturally react to something before your brain actually processes what happened. And I think there's a little bit of that happened in the Ferlando Castillo situation. Yeah. And so I think could that situation have been avoided? I think it could have, but you have to go way before it actually ended up coming to that point where he's giving giving Ferlando instructions and stuff like that. So I think that's where we can get better as officer, is trying to make sure we're safer in our approach to things, slowing things down as opposed to rushing things. I think we have a tendency to speed things up as officers, and when we speed things up, that's where we find ourselves making the mistakes. So when the opportunity prevails, slow it down. If you're dealing with somebody that might be a felony suspect, go stand by your car, wait for your responding officers to arrive, do a high-risk traffic stop, pull them out, bring them to you, slow it down. Sometimes we like to speed it up, go up there, we want to take them out, but that's where mistakes will be made. So it's a mistake at the end of the day, but I hate to say it, sometimes mistakes have cost people their life. And we, as officers, have a responsibility to be held to a higher standard, and we can't afford to make those mistakes.
What's your favorite flavor of donut?
Oh, good question. That is a 10-pointer.
Thank you.
10-pointer right there. Krispy Kremes all day. You got to go strawberry shortcake with a cream filling inside.
He's just pandering.
I'm pandering. I'm sorry.
Oh.
Hey, we're going to move to our subscriber portion now.
Really? We're already there?
We're already there. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Hey, we can come back and do this again, too, for a longer discussion. I would love to.
Let's absolutely do it.
I would love to do that. I'm sorry I had to cut it short.
He told us he's going to save his very best cop story for the subscriber portion.
That means you better subscribe.
Yeah.
That means you better subscribe. And this is going to be a really good, really just like Hollywood type. Go subscribe.
Jump in the air at the side with 2 guns like that?
Yeah, actually, you might actually hear something about me curving the bullets, but you only hear that if you go on the subscriber
you do
portion.
gun kata? Like you like...
We're not giving you a cut of any of the subscriptions here.
Yeah, I expect 10%. I'll just.
Oh, you were an insurance salesman.
I was.
So you know. Okay.
I was.
All right, he knows how to push it.
I was.
All right, here we go.
Doing it.
Coming up next for Babylon Bee subscribers.
What's like one of the scariest moments so far in your career as a cop?
There was a situation where, one was my officer involved shooting.
Cop stories.
Cop stories. Give us. You've teased it throughout.
Okay.
Now we have to know.
We're just going to sit here.
That was a crazy story, though. You got to admit that.
That was pretty good.
Pretty good.
Did you ever question your calling as a cop?
Enjoying this hard-hitting interview? Become a Babylon Bee subscriber to hear the rest of this conversation. Go to babylonbee.com/plans for full-length, ad-free podcasts. Kyle and Ethan would like to thank Seth Dillon for paying the bills, Adam Ford for creating their job, the other writers for tirelessly pitching headlines, the subscribers, and you, the listener. Until next time, this is Dave DeAndrea, the voice of the Babylon Bee.